Each of his creatures took one of my beloved sisters with them. Come here.
Over the last 50 years, nun horror has become a popular genre in its own right. However, not all are created equally. Maybe it's the cheap sets, lackluster special effects, and atrocious acting that frequently characterize disposable films shot on a shoestring budget. Even when filmmakers exploit tried-and-true Catholic horror requisites, like secluded convents, foreboding religious iconography, or demonic possession, many contemporary nun horror features fall well short of a chilling viewer experience.
Father Frank touched my wee-wee.
Following an explosion of the haunted nun theme in recent years, a few hair-raising flicks have stood out from the legions of duds.
Are you ready?
Yeah, sure.
In no particular order, here are 5 exemplary nun horror films from the past few years that won't leave you wishing you could take those 90 minutes back. Number 5, Sister Death. From director Paco Plaza, the Spanish film Sister Death is a prequel to his 2017 Ouija horror triumph, Veronica. Plaza reprises the solar eclipse motif from his previous film to place the story of a miracle-seer child-turned-novice nun with paranormal abilities. Far from a straightforward supernatural thriller, Sister Death conveys themes of past trauma and collective memory, which has become a staple of Spanish horror in its own right. Protagonist Sister Narcisa's innate psychic gifts for visions and communication with spirits drive the tension and horror aspect of the film. A parallel theme of Spanish Civil War atrocities explores the lasting effects of an oppressive history. Sister Death transcends the crude indulgence of special effects and religious imagery to delve into the dark aspects of human nature. For its ability to transport the viewer into a well-crafted haunting story of unresolved trauma and otherworldly entities, Sister Death is a must-watch. Numbers 4 and 3, the Nun series. The Nun and the Nun II have carved their own indispensable niche within the Conjuring universe. While the Conjuring films extract much of their fright factor from alleged true-life events recorded by paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren, the Nun series exercises great factual and spiritual liberties to establish an origin story for the entire franchise. The Nun explores the emergence of Valak, a demonic nun who first appeared in The Conjuring 2.
Who's that?
The story seems engaging yet sounds familiar.
Bravo.
Father Burke, played by Damien Bashir, and Sister Irene, played by Taisa Farmiga, investigate the mysterious suicide of a young nun at Carta Monastery in Romania.
Forgive me, Lord.
The duo, along with a local slacker nicknamed Frenchie, slowly determine that a dark force has consumed the grounds after an Allied bomb dislodged the seal imprisoning Valak.
Evil thunder.
While the nun unleashes familiar tropes like premonitions, hangings, loose demons, and the undead, its production value distinguishes the film from its less endowed counterparts. The first Nun film is set in 1952 Romania, soon after the country's infamous collaboration with Axis forces. Although Father Burke and Sister Irene first arrive at Abbey of St. Carta during a pleasant sunny day, they're immediately surrounded by scores of gravestones, marking victims of another dark period in history, the Black Death. Much of the film was shot on location in Romania and features extensive use of 15th century Transylvanian fortresses, such as Corvin Castle. The film's mood of apprehension follows precedents of Gothic horror, which The Nun wisely builds upon. The Nun II continues the story of Valak while further uncovering the veiled demon's conception as a fallen angel. Unlike the first Nun film, which relies on grand location sets and candlelit rooms to establish mood, its sequel takes an opposite approach.
Throat slit open.
Rather than endless mazes of dark brooding chambers, The Nun II creates photogenic impressions that contrast shadow and light. Taisa Farmiga reprises her role as Sister Irene, and as a descendant of Saint Lucy, is able to harness the power of an ancient relic and turn wine into the blood of Christ. Normally, this brand of scare factor requires the viewer to harbor a specific set of religious beliefs. Although the scariest moments of The Nun II do not involve physical manifestations of devils, violence, or special effects. The appearance of Valak on everyday objects is enough to give an ardent atheist nightmares. The Nun series explores themes of faith, redemption, and the battle against supernatural evil within the context of Catholicism, blending atmospheric horror with religious elements to create a suspenseful narrative that is definitely worth viewing as a double feature. Number 2, The First Omen. Contemporary horror films have finally realized the potential for origin stories to revitalize dormant franchises. For fans of The Omen, its prequel provides a fresh perspective of an exhausted storyline. The First Omen takes place in 1971 Rome, amidst a backdrop of political and social upheaval, coinciding with growing ambivalence in traditional institutions.
It's a rejection of authority, even the church.
A young American novitiate, Margaret, played by Nell Tiger Free, arrives at an orphanage as she prepares to take her final vows. She is quickly and easily persuaded to engage in un-nun-like behavior by her new roommate, Luce, who seems more interested in clubbing than praying. Fans of classic 70s nunsploitation shouldn't get their hopes up. The young duo's sinful forays are a momentary distraction. Visions and self-immolation have become obligatory facets of modern nun horror films, to which The First Omen is no exception. Margaret slowly uncovers a conspiracy to unleash evil into the world to counter rising secularism. She eventually realizes that a Rosemary's Baby-esque ritual conception already took place under the inebriated haze of her and Luce's night on the town. Margaret is ultimately presented with the choice of allowing a human incarnation of the Antichrist to emerge or killing her own child.
Give me the baby.
Perhaps the team behind this franchise offshoot wrote themselves into a corner with few avenues for a sequel. Creative liberties end here as The First Omen advances to the beginning timeline of the original 1976 Omen film, The Birth of Damien. Honorable mentions: Immaculate and the Convent. In contrast to The First Omen, Immaculate takes a pro-choice viewpoint of the pregnant nun subcategory. Sister Cecilia's Immaculate Conception is only a ruse to mask Father Tedeschi's mad medical experiments, a parallel to Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. The doctor seeks to create a new Messiah through what he believes is the DNA of Jesus.
The key to resurrection.
In the end, there isn't much of a choice at all. The film's ending takes an unexpected turn when Sister Cecilia unhesitatingly resorts to drastic measures to leave her traumatic experience behind her.
Another necromancer.
Set in 17th century England, writer-director Paul Hyatt's The Convent hinges its horror elements on the subject of visions and premonitions. In a religious experiment gone wrong, a reawakened supernatural entity roams the corridors of a remote monastery. Although the convent's concoction of religious horror subgenres provides enough fright to stand on its own, equal emphasis is placed on specific elements of gore. It's a terror of all trades, master of none.
Liars.
And number 1, Consecration.
What is it that you think you know?
The plainly titled 2023 film Consecration is the least marketed movie on this list. Despite low expectations, writer-director Christopher Smith's nun horror offering slightly edges out the other films. In Consecration, we explore an isolated Catholic sect through the eyes of skeptical Dr. Grace, played by Jenna Malone. She makes an impromptu trip to Mount Saviour Convent on the Isle of Skye in Scotland to investigate the mysterious death of her priest brother,
tragically taking his own life in the process.
Grace's intermittent visions allude to some dark force in an alternate timeline, although the screenwriters prefer to ground the setting in past sins of the Crusades. Consecration avoids cheap tricks like jump scares or spontaneous human combustion, and if that's your go-to terror trigger, this film will bore you. Instead, director Smith sees apprehension in the banal, which is probably why we see visual emphasis on the daily lives of nuns, along with their esoteric rituals. It would be difficult to characterize this film as traditional Catholic horror, since it favors the point of view of atheists. The final act of Consecration uncovers the logic behind mysterious sightings of blood-stained nuns, poltergeist episodes, and impulsive acts of self-harm. From a non-believer's perspective, our logic mirrors that of Grace, who discovers that she is the manifestation of a dislodged demonic relic. And on the surface, the ending of the film feels unresolved, But there is a resolution. Grace ultimately chooses freedom over captivity because she sincerely believes that her innate goodness will triumph over evil. It's no surprise that a plethora of nun horror films have flooded the market during the last few years. Within the Catholic faith, nuns uphold a fierce reputation to instill fear in schoolchildren, while outsiders see crumbling convents, along with their checkered past, more frightening than the secular world. As common motifs of self-sacrifice, immolation, and conception continue to recycle, future nun horror must find new and creative ways to shock audiences.
Not even God is safe.
Do you agree with our film selection? Let us know in the comments.
Please like and subscribe.